They thought they could take everything from me: my farm, my dreams, my legacy. The HOA reduced years of my hard work to ashes, believing they had the power to erase my home and livelihood with a single, calculated act. But what they didn't realize was that they had made a critical legal mistake, one that would become the key to my ultimate revenge. Would they survive the storm they had unleashed? Stay tuned until the end to see how one overlooked legal detail turned the tables on them. And if you love stories of justice being served, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It started as just another morning on my farm, a peaceful routine that I had grown to love. The sun rose gently over the horizon, casting golden light across my 6-acre property. I carried a basket as I moved between the chicken coop and my vegetable garden, listening to the soft clucking of my hens. The smell of damp earth and fresh hay filled the air. This was my slice of heaven, my piece of land left to me by my grandfather. It was more than just property. It was my home, my livelihood, and my dream. That morning, as I gathered eggs, I noticed a neatly folded letter sticking out of my mailbox. The envelope had an official-looking emblem on it: Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I frowned. My farm wasn't even part of the HOA. How could they possibly have any say over what I did with my land? Curious, but not overly concerned, I opened the letter and skimmed through the contents. My stomach tightened as I read the words inside. Notice of violation: unauthorized livestock, unsightly structures, and improper fencing. It went on to list fines and warned of further action if the issues weren't corrected immediately. I shook my head, chuckling to myself. There had to be a mistake. My farm had existed long before Willow Creek Estates was built next door. There was no way an HOA that I had never joined could enforce rules on my land. I placed the letter aside, making a mental note to call the HOA office later to clear up the confusion. I soon learned that the situation was no misunderstanding. Later that afternoon, I saw Patricia Whitmore, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, standing at my property line, arms crossed. She was wearing her signature pristine white pants and a pressed blouse, looking completely out of place against the rustic backdrop of my farm. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice clipped and impatient. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked toward the fence, keeping my voice friendly. "Good morning, Patricia. Something I can help you with." She didn't return my smile. Instead, she pointed at my rooster, Charlie, who had just let out a proud crow. "That thing is waking up the entire neighborhood at the crack of dawn," she said, her nose wrinkling in distaste. "People are complaining." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, Patricia, this is a farm. Roosters crow. That's just how it works." Her lips tightened. "This isn't a farm anymore. This is Willow Creek Estates, and we have community standards. Your animals, your garden, and your lifestyle don't fit in here." I could feel my patience thinning, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I was here before the development was built, Patricia. My property isn't part of the HOA. I have every legal right to keep my animals." Her eyes narrowed, and I saw a glimmer of something cold behind them. "We'll see about that," she said before turning sharply on her heel and walking away. I didn't realize it at the time, but that conversation was just the beginning. Within a week, I received another letter, this time a warning about my vegetable garden being unsightly. Then came the noise complaints about my goats. Soon, the friendly waves from neighbors became fewer, and the polite chats at the farmer's market turned into awkward silences. Something told me that Patricia wasn't going to stop until she got what she wanted. After that first encounter with Patricia, the harassment began in full force. At first, it was just letters, weekly notices from the Willow Creek Homeowners Association stuffed into my mailbox, each one citing ridiculous violations that I supposedly committed. One week, it was a complaint about my fencing being improper. The next, it was my compost pile, which they claimed was an eyesore. Then, it was my vegetable garden, which Patricia had deemed messy and unkempt. The accusations kept piling up, but there was one major problem. I wasn't even part of the HOA. I kept every single letter in a folder, knowing that I might need proof one day. Then, the verbal threats started. One afternoon, I was out in my garden pulling weeds when I heard a sharp voice call my name. I turned to see Patricia standing at the fence line, arms crossed tightly. Two other HOA board members stood behind her, both wearing stern expressions. "We've sent you multiple notices," Patricia said, her voice filled with artificial politeness. You haven't responded. That's not a good look. I wiped the dirt from my hands and took a deep breath. I haven't responded because your letters don't apply to me. My land isn't part of Willow Creek Estates. Patricia let out a humorless chuckle. Not yet, but things change. A chill ran down my spine at the way she said it. Are you threatening me? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her eyes gleamed. Oh no, we just want what's best for the community. And honestly, your operation is bringing down property values. I clenched my jaw. My farm has been here for years. I have every legal right to run it. One of the men behind her, Gregory Daniels, the HOA president, finally spoke. Not if the zoning changes, he said, looking at Patricia. We've been discussing a proposal to have this area rezoned. I swallowed hard. I had heard rumors of zoning changes before, but I never thought they'd actually try to go through with it. That's not something the HOA has control over. I shot back. The county does. Patricia smirked. Let's just say we have friends in the right places. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, my goats had escaped. The gate to their enclosure had been mysteriously unlatched. I found them wandering near the road, frightened and confused. At first, I thought maybe I had left the latch open myself, but deep down, I knew better. Someone had let them out on purpose. Days later, I found chicken feed mixed with strange white pellets near my coop. Panicked, I removed all of it immediately and took a sample to a veterinarian. The results confirmed my worst fears. It was poison. Someone had tried to kill my animals. By now, it was clear. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was sabotage. I contacted the local sheriff's office, but without hard evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They advised me to install security cameras, which I did that very evening. I placed them near my barn, my chicken coop, and at the entrance to my property. As I reviewed the footage later that week, I saw something that made my blood run cold. At 2 a.m., a familiar white SUV slowly drove past my property. The driver? Patricia Whitmore. She wasn't finished with me yet. I never imagined that my battle with the HOA would escalate to the point of losing everything I had built. But that's exactly what happened. It started on a crisp autumn morning, the day before I was set to leave town. My mother had been struggling with her health, and I planned to spend 2 weeks helping her recover after her latest treatment. Before leaving, I took extra precautions, asking my friend Miguel to check on my animals daily, installing 2 security cameras, and even notifying the sheriff's office that I'd be away. As I packed my truck, I happened to glance across the street and saw Patricia standing in her driveway, her phone pressed to her ear. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me leave, waiting for something. Then, I saw something that made my stomach twist, a glimpse into her garage, where several large red gas containers were neatly lined up against the wall. I should have turned around right then. I should have stayed. 2 weeks later, I returned home, eager to get back to my farm. But as soon as I turned onto my road, I knew something was terribly wrong. The sky looked gray and hazy, as if someone had smudged charcoal across it. The scent of burnt wood and ash filled my nose, growing stronger the closer I got. My heart pounded as I pressed the gas pedal, desperate to get home. As my farm came into view, I slammed on the brakes so hard that my truck skidded to a stop. Everything was gone. The barn, the chicken coop, the garden. Everything I had spent years building and nurturing was reduced to nothing but piles of charred wood and ash. The only structure left standing was my house, untouched by the fire, but eerily silent. I jumped out of my truck, sprinting toward the ruins, my throat dry, my chest tight. Henrietta, Ruby, I called out, desperate to hear the familiar clucks of my chickens. But there was only silence. The garden, where children from the neighborhood once picked tomatoes and pumpkins, was now a wasteland of blackened soil and ash. The barn, where I stored my tools and feed, was nothing more than a skeletal frame against the sky. I dropped to my knees, hands sifting through the warm ashes, feeling the weight of 5 years of hard work crumble between my fingers. Then, I heard tires crunching on gravel. I looked up to see a pristine white SUV pull into my driveway. Patricia stepped out, wearing her signature white pants and a smug expression. Behind her was Gregory Daniels, the HOA president, carrying a leather folder. He adjusted his tie as he walked toward me. Well, Patricia said, surveying the ruins. Looks like the farm problem took care of itself. I stared at her in disbelief. Did she just admit to this? What do you mean, took care of itself? I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. Gregory cleared his throat. While you were away, we held an emergency HOA meeting about your property. After several complaints regarding noise, odors, and unsightly structures, we decided to take action. I stood up, fists clenched. You mean you burned down my farm? You destroyed my animals, my home? Patricia smirked. We hired a contractor to remove the non-compliant structures. If the fire spread, well, perhaps the dry conditions were a factor. My vision blurred with rage and devastation. But then, something shiny in the ashes caught my eye. A small metal stake, half buried, still standing where my property lines had originally been marked. A property survey marker. A glimmer of hope ignited inside me. Something wasn't adding up about their story, and I was about to find out exactly what they had done. As I stood in the smoldering ruins of my farm, staring at the property survey marker, a realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. The HOA had made a fatal mistake. I knew my land well. My grandfather had passed it down to me, and over the years, I had studied every inch of it. The survey marker, still standing and untouched by the fire, marked the true boundary of my property. If that marker was still there, then the claim that my land had been rezoned into the HOA's jurisdiction had to be false. I clenched my fists, determination rising inside me. They thought they could erase me, but they overlooked a crucial detail, a legal loophole that would turn the tables on them. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by old documents, zoning maps, and the folder of every letter the HOA had ever sent me. I flipped through county records, searching for any recent changes to property lines. Then, at 2 a.m., I found it. Buried deep in the county's official rezoning documents, I discovered something shocking. The recent zoning change Patricia had bragged about did not include my land. It was crystal clear. The HOA had no legal right to enforce their rules on my property. The creek that ran along the edge of my land had been set as a natural boundary, and my farm remained outside their jurisdiction. Everything they had done, the complaints, the fines, and, ultimately, burning down my farm, was completely illegal. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to destroy them. The next morning, as soon as the county office opened, I called and requested official boundary maps and rezoning documents. Within minutes, my inbox pinged with an email, confirming everything I had suspected. Next, I drove to the sheriff's office with my findings. I met with Deputy Carter, who had been sympathetic when I reported the fire. When I spread the documents across his desk, he let out a long whistle. So, the HOA had no right to do anything to your property? He asked, scanning the papers. None at all, I confirmed. And now, I have proof. Carter nodded. This changes everything. We'll be launching a full investigation. If the HOA acted outside their authority, this could be criminal destruction of property. I wasn't done yet. I needed more evidence. I spent the next few hours reviewing the security footage from my cameras. And there it was, a truck with the HOA's logo pulling up to my farm 3 days after I left. Several men got out, carrying tools and containers. Then, Patricia herself arrived. The footage was damning. Not only did it show unauthorized trespassing, but it also captured Patricia directing the workers on what to remove. And then, at dawn on the day of the fire, another vehicle arrived, a white SUV matching Patricia's. I rewound the footage again and again, watching as she got out, carrying something in her hands. A red gasoline container. Patricia had started the fire herself. I knew what I had to do. That night, I made copies of everything. The footage, the documents, the letters, and prepared to face the HOA head-on. This wasn't just about my farm anymore. This was about justice, and I was going to make sure they paid for what they had done. Armed with undeniable evidence, I was ready to bring the HOA down. The following evening, I arrived at the Willow Creek HOA's monthly meeting, walking straight to the front as the board members discussed trivial violations, mailbox colors, and unapproved garden decorations. Then, Patricia saw me. "This is a private meeting," she snapped, her usual smugness faltering. I smiled. Actually, as someone whose property was illegally destroyed by the HOA, I have every right to be here. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I placed my documents on a table, unfolded the official county zoning map, and began speaking. The HOA claims they had the authority to remove my farm, I said, my voice steady. But this official zoning map proves they never did. My land was never part of your jurisdiction. The room fell silent. Gregory Daniels, the HOA president, paled as he examined the documents. Patricia, however, wasn't ready to give up. "You're lying," she spat. "You ignored multiple violations. We acted within our rights." I shook my head and pulled out my next piece of evidence, the security footage. I turned my laptop toward the homeowners and hit play. The screen showed Patricia arriving in the early morning hours, holding a red gasoline canister, walking towards my farm. Moments later, the flames erupted. Murmurs turned to outraged shouts. One homeowner, Lisa Carter, stood up. "You mean to tell us the HOA burned down someone's property illegally?" "I have more," I said. "I met with the sheriff's office this morning. They're opening a criminal investigation for arson, destruction of private property, and fraud. If you were involved in approving this act, you might want to lawyer up." Gregory Daniels stood abruptly, his face sweaty and pale. "I had no idea Patricia took it this far. I resign." Patricia, seeing her support crumbling, shrieked. "I did what was best for the community. That farm was an eyesore." Her words only fueled the crowd's anger. Homeowners turned against her, demanding her immediate removal from the board. As I left the meeting, I knew her time was up. The next morning, the sheriff's office made it official. Patricia Whitmore was arrested for arson. With Patricia out of the picture, the HOA crumbled. Gregory and half the board resigned, and the new leadership under Lisa voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. Meanwhile, my lawsuit against the HOA proceeded. The court ruled in my favor, awarding me a six-figure settlement, enough to rebuild everything I had lost. But more than that, I secured a permanent legal exemption, ensuring that no HOA could ever touch my land again. As news of my victory spread, something incredible happened. Neighbors who had once ignored me stepped forward to help rebuild. Families came with tools, seedlings, and supplies. Contractors offered to reconstruct my barn for free. 1 year later, my farm was thriving once again. The community that once tried to erase me was now part of something better: a neighborhood farmers market, sustainable gardening workshops, and an open-door farm for children to visit. One day, Lisa stopped by. "Funny, isn't it?" she said, smiling. "Patricia tried to erase your farm, and now it's the heart of the community." I looked around at the new barn, the vibrant vegetable garden, and the children feeding my chickens. "She tried to burn it down," I said. "But instead, we grew something even stronger." Lessons learned from the story. This story is a clear testament to the power of perseverance, legal knowledge, and the determination to stand up against injustice. When faced with unfair treatment, instead of enduring it, we can fight for our legitimate rights. If I hadn't gathered evidence, documented everything, and taken action, I could have lost everything with no chance of recovery. Meaningful message. Know your rights. Understanding the law and property ownership is the best way to protect yourself from those who try to exploit or oppress you. Community support changes everything. When people unite instead of turning away, they create a better, stronger environment. Every adversity can become an opportunity. No matter how difficult a situation is, perseverance can turn a tragedy into a new and meaningful beginning. Personal perspective. I believe that fairness and integrity always prevail. There will always be those who misuse power to control others, but truth and justice cannot be hidden forever. What's important is that we stand up for what is rightfully ours and never allow those in positions of power to intimidate or dictate our lives. If you love stories about justice, resilience, and valuable life lessons, make sure to subscribe to Story Precious. We bring you touching, meaningful, and inspiring stories to help you gain deeper insights into life. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Share this video with your friends and family to spread the message of perseverance, justice, and kindness. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.